I should have finished my 0 to 5k challenge last Friday, but it's now Monday and I've completed the third run of week 7 because I had a whole week interruption. The plan is do run 1 on Wednesday, do run 2 on Friday, do run 3 on Sunday and finish the challenge. Wish me luck. Okay, I think I'm going to cancel the run. It's drizzling and I thought I've already ran when it was drizzling, but this is a lot more. I've only walked a couple of minutes, you know, the 5-minute walk before I start, and well, I feel pretty damp already. So I'm gonna watch the sky. If I can find a time where I can run today, then I'm gonna do it, otherwise it's going to be tomorrow. Whew. So by the time I finished work and it stopped raining, we're back to a friendly drizzle. It was dark, but I did my run. That was 25 minutes straight. I didn't feel so bad. The last 5 minutes were harder, but otherwise I'm pretty happy with it. And only 2 runs to go. I have finished the second run of week 8. The weeks mean nothing anymore, but there's one more run after that. That was 30 minutes straight. I know 100% I have never ran this long in my life. I'm not sure that by the end of it I will cover the 5k, but I'll be happy if I complete the time prescribed and be close to 5k. It would be nice to get to 5k though. We'll see. As you can tell from my face, it's done. And it was really hard. In fact, for the first time, the watch told me it was hard. And I agree with it, but it's done. Now all I have to do is shower, enter all the data in my Excel sheet and see what the numbers say, if they say anything. See you in a bit. I am down to the final page of my booklet. This 0 to 5k challenge is officially complete. It should have been 8 weeks, it was closer to 10 weeks, but it is done. When I started in late July, I set out to become a runner when I was the opposite of a runner, never enjoyed running, but I wanted to see if I was able to do a 5k. I tracked a bunch of data: resting heart rate, walking heart rate, running heart rate, recovery, HRV, blood pressure, but that was not significant at all, sleep, and of course metrics connected with the run itself, how long I ran, or rather how long was the workout, how much of that was running because it started as intervals, how far I ran, that sort of things. And I have learned some things that I was not really expecting. So let me catch you up with what happened since the last video. That was week 7 and I did not complete week 7 because I had hurt myself. A light muscle strain, one of those muscles on the hip there. Now this was going to be a turning point anyway because the program was switching from intervals to long stretches of running with 1 5-minute break in between. So that was a big change of pace for me and I could feel it. It was definitely harder. You might remember that I wasn't too sure about what the data was telling me, particularly my VO2 max that was going down, and essentially my working theories were it's just an approximation from Apple Health, or I'm switching from intervals to running long stretches of time, which will not influence VO2 max as much, or I'm tired and I need time to recover. So when I realized that my muscle here on the hip was painful, I decided to take a whole week off, but it cost me because I was so close to the end of the challenge. I could feel it, and that was definitely an unforeseen and very unwelcome setback. Now, I never ran in pain. Monday, that was week 7, run 1. After the run, when I got up, I was like, oh, I can feel it, but it felt more like muscle pain, you know, after working out. And that was fine. So I ran on Wednesday, and during the run on Wednesday, I was fine. It's after that I clearly had pain on the hip, even when I was not doing anything. And that's when I decided to stop running. However, I need to be honest with myself and with you guys. September 19th, my hip was not fully healed, but I was mostly fine, and I decided to run again. I knew I would feel it after the run, though nothing compared with the pain I had felt week 7. In hindsight, I think I should have waited longer, and the truth is, because it was a challenge and because I was making those videos, I decided to start running again sooner than I should have. In my defense, there were a number of factors. Yes, there was the pressure of what if I don't publish a video for the week, and that counted. But it was not just that. There was the fact also that summer is ending and we had rainy days, and the more I waited, the more likely the weather would be unpleasant. The more I waited, the harder it would be to get back into it. I assume even I might have to go back to the beginning of week 7 to just get used to running again. And the biggest and scariest thing for me, I mentioned in the very first videos of this series, that running is something that I had tried to do multiple times, and every single time at one point I had an excuse, a good excuse to not run that day, and that was the end of it. So I was really worried that I would not complete the challenge. But the bottom line is the challenge pressure, both internal and external, made me decide to start running when I did, when I probably should have waited another week just to make sure everything was fine. Looking back at the data just before the injury, my VO2 was going down. I had mentioned that the runs were harder, and I had had a couple nights of really bad sleep. Now, it doesn't mean that I was gonna have a problem or an accident or an injury because of these, but it does make injuries more likely, and I should have taken that into account. Honestly, I think my body was signaling to me that I needed more time to recover. There's the influence of the challenge, but there's also the fact I don't think I could really tell the difference between I don't really want to go running because I don't like it and I'm lazy, and I don't really want to go running and I shouldn't because my body is telling me I'm pushing myself too hard. Essentially, I don't know what overtraining looks like, and I don't think I overtrained. In fact, after the run, the watch would tell me the heartbeat, the average heartbeat during the run, and it will also say if the effort was moderate. And that's what I had throughout the whole experience, except on the last day, the last run, I had hard. And yes, it had been hard. So I don't think I pushed myself too hard, but I did take chances. To conclude on the hip injury, I am not going to run until it's perfectly fine, and even then I'm not sure I will run again. We will see. I am not giving myself any sort of pressure or deadline to start running again or to start exercising again. Let's look at the broader picture at the whole 10 weeks and see what happened during that. Week 1 was late July, and the workout consisted of 6 to 8 minutes running in intervals of 1, then 1.5, then 2, then 2.5 minutes. But overall, I only ran 6 to 8 minutes. The ratio between the running time and the walking time, it was 3/4 walking and 1/4 running. At that point, my resting heart rate was around 72 beats per minute. And my running heart rate was 128 beats per minute, but that was what my watch told me, and that included the walking times as well. The VO2 max started going up very, very quickly, as I mentioned, and it was week 4 that I reached the peak. I reached 30 for a couple of days at least. Week 4, the workouts were about 16 to 18 minutes per sessions. The distance is not really relevant because week 1 it was about 3 kilometers, but mostly walking. Week 4, we were at 3.4, 3.5 kilometers. Half of it was walking and half of it was running. So that's not very telling. However, my resting heart rate was down to 67. My running heart rate still around 134, even though the workout or the workload increased. The final week, that was last week, after a whole week of not exercising at all, the running time was 25 minutes, then 30, then 35 minutes continuously. I covered between 3.5 and 4.89 kilometers to be very precise. We'll round it up to 5k, thank you very much. My heart rate was around 139, which I think is fair considering it was continuous exercise. My VO2 max, however, went down to 28, and at the time of recording it is 27 point, I wrote it somewhere, 0.7 or 8, so it keeps going down. What does that mean? Well, I did achieve my performance goal of running 35 minutes continuously and mostly hitting the 5k goal. As I mentioned before, I wasn't sure I would reach the 5k because yes, I was running, but I was not pushing myself extremely hard to lengthen my step or quicken my step. I really tried to make things as comfortable as possible for myself. So I didn't reach the 5k exactly, but 35 minutes is a great achievement for me. I have never ran this long in my whole life. Even at school when we had PE, I never ran that long, for sure. My cardiovascular fitness, mostly indicated by VO2 max, peaked at week 4 and then keep going down. It might be a mixture of change in the pace of the workout, going from intervals to continuous run. Definitely there was some fatigue and recoveries there as well, but it is what it is. You might remember I wondered a few times if at the end of the run I should tell the app that it was too hard, and I never did. I said it was just fine because the descriptor for just fine were hard to breathe, hard to talk, can't sing. That was it. For hard, it was I'm in pain, and I never was in pain while running. So I never told the app it was too hard, apart from, and this is still a mystery to me, I can't remember, that infamous week 7 run 2, where after that I was really in pain. I was also quite annoyed because the app told me that I would have an optimized run, and I cannot remember for the life of me if I told the app it was too hard. If I did, it was completely subconscious, and I guess it was not just my body trying to tell me something, but my mind as well. Or maybe because of the distance I ran, the progress I had, the app determined that I was not quite on track to hit the 5k. I still don't know. The running capacity improvement obviously is real. I went from 6 minutes to 35 minutes, which is substantial. Yes, it probably come at the cost of recovery. I could have done better there, for sure. Something changed during the final week when the intervals disappeared and it was continuous running. You may remember in the earlier weeks, I mentioned that during the running part of the interval, I would make lists, I would think about what I would say afterwards. And if I look at my booklet, looking back at the first weeks, I would always have a little story, things that I wanted to say. I would take notes. Oh, I should mention that. Towards the end, it's just numbers. That's it. Just numbers. I did the run, done. I don't have funny story to tell you about how Spotify annoyed me by running an ad when I was gaining momentum or anything. I was honestly, in my mind, it was just my breathing, and I really focused to try and breathe. When I run in the evening or particularly early in the morning, I was worried that if I was inhaling through the mouth with the cold air, I might, get a sore throat or something. So I really try to inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Hard to do, but I did that for some of the time. And at most in my mind, I was going 1, 2, 3. No, I was going 1, 2, 3, 4. I was counting in French for 1, 2, breathe in, 3, 4, breathe out. So I'm not going to say that I got into, transcendence or runner's high. That's not it. But I was just running and I was not trying to distract me from the run. So I really like that. And I noticed once, because I ran much, much later, it was dark, and the path that I run on doesn't have street lights. So obviously I was not going to run in the dark. It was bad enough that I was running in the evening under the rain, drizzle. Under a light drizzle, I was not going to run in the dark on top of things. So I changed my path and I ran on the pavements along various streets. And the fact that I didn't know exactly where I was, I think helped me not think too much about how much I had run and how much was left. With my path, I know quite accurately when I reach 5 minutes of the running, 10 minutes and 15 minutes of the running. Like, it was more or less always the same point. So I think that changing the path or the route you run on can help, not thinking about how much you have run and how much you have left to run. Anyway, towards the end, that's when I felt more like a runner, I think. Now, it's not because I liked it or because it felt easy, but because I guess I was into it. I was fully present in the moment, just running. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that feeling, and I remember after the run, I felt good, tired, but I felt good about having done the run. There are a few pieces of advice that I can share from my great experience of running more or less for 8 weeks. The first one is minimize the friction from getting out the door and running. Have your gear ready. Write it down in your calendar. This is not novel advice. I'm sure you've heard it for all kinds of things like habit settings, but it really, really makes a difference because you don't have to ask yourself, am I running? So you are running anyway. I actually put that in my calendar. I time blocked it, so there was no question whether I was going to run or not, unless the weather was terrible, in which case I would look at the weather immediately, see which time of the day the rain would stop, and reschedule my run for that time. It was in my calendar and that really helped. The second thing is about gear investment. I mentioned earlier on that I didn't want to fall into a very common pitfall, especially for me, where before you start an activity you go, yeah, but I need the gear, don't I? Like I want to draw, and so I'm gonna have to buy a deluxe set of pencils and things. No, all you need is a single pencil. I know that. I started the drawing challenge. But for running, I was like, no, don't buy anything. I did eventually buy a sports bra, and I think that was a really good investment. At times, I regretted or wondered about having clothes that were more insulated for running, especially when it was raining. I don't know if it would have made a big difference or not, but don't invest too much in equipment until you know that you can do the activity, you want to do the activity, I guess. The third thing is following a program. Again, removes the decision making, lightens your mental load. I was happy with the app, 5K Fitness, I think it is called. I was happy with it. There's a bunch of them on the App Store. That's the one that I had installed years ago when I first decided I wanted to run. I think they offer more or less the same sort of things. That really helps. Ideally, a running partner. Again, it's not groundbreaking. And at least somebody that you can talk to about the experience. For me, that's what those videos did. making the video for you was really maybe more for me than for you. And finally, unlike me, listen to your body. Really listen to your body. I know it's difficult, to tell the difference between I don't wanna because I'm lazy and I don't wanna because I'm pushing too hard. I think that comes with experience. But in my case, I wish I had been a little more considerate to my body. So what I learned about challenges and running in particular, this 0 to 5K challenge was really important for me. It was the first challenge that I documented for this channel, and it was also a trial because quite long, 8 weeks, difficult, and something that I didn't like. And for me, it was a test whether this channel made sense at all. So it was important, and maybe that influenced my decision to start running a bit too soon, but it was really important for me. Shortly after that, I started the Inner Peace Challenge, and so my first 2 challenges didn't work out the way I had planned. Yes, planning things, wonderful, it helps, but at least for me, I shouldn't get too hung up on the plan and be okay with changing it. Changing the plan is not a failure, it's adaptation. I also compounded difficulty of that final week of my 0 to 5K challenge because that's the week I started the no caffeine challenge. Essentially, I was dealing with the last and potentially hardest week of my running with caffeine withdrawal. That wasn't smart, that wasn't planned that way. Simply, I had run out of coffee. I was eager to get started. It wasn't smart. I should have waited for the no caffeine challenge. Just another week. But then I should have waited a week to start running again. That was completely messing up my schedule. That I shouldn't be too hung up on. That's a tough lesson to learn. When I started this challenge, I wondered if there was a point where something would click and I would suddenly enjoy running and I would become a runner. And I checked for that feeling quite regularly and it never came. But I did feel good about the last few runs. So kinda. I still don't love running, but I know I can do it, and the knowledge that I can do it really, really pleases me. And it proved that I can tackle something that is difficult, that I don't really like. I can do it if I put my mind to it. So am I a runner? I think maybe I was a runner from day one when I started running, and it was very clear in my mind that I was going to complete this challenge. It reminded me, you know, when you read the self-help books or you listen to influencers and they tell you about setting the intention. I think that's what happened here. Like, it was very clear to me there was no way I could not finish this challenge. It would mean that I fell yet another time. I didn't want that to happen. It would mean that my whole channel, DanaePlays, was doomed. There was no doubt in my mind that I would complete it. I started having doubt after my injury. Will I ever manage to complete it? But when I started, no doubt whatsoever. So once I fully recover from the hip injury, I think I might run again. I tried before I started the 0 to 5K, I tried every day to go for a walk, about 30-minute walk, sometimes more if I had time in the morning. I can see myself, if the weather is fine and if I feel up to it, rather than walk for 30 minutes, go and run for 30 minutes. I think I would like that. The app that I used, the 0 to 5K plan, is 8 weeks, but they have more after that. There's a week 9 and a week 10 and more that can be unlocked. So I'm a little curious about that. However, no deadline, no expectations. I will see if or when it happens. To conclude, the data shows that I did get fitter in some ways, better resting heart rate, I can run much longer, my VO2 max does a nice rainbow. I ended up higher, slightly higher than where I started, but I am genuinely glad and proud, I think, that I completed the challenge. It taught me about building habits and also a demonstration of how pressure from the challenge or making videos can influence decision making in ways that are not necessarily helpful. That's a lesson I'll try to remember. No YouTube video is worth risking your health. Now, if you're starting your own running journey, I really hope that my experience, including or maybe especially my mistakes, will give you some useful perspective on what to expect and what to watch out for. Pay attention to your data if you're tracking it, but more importantly, pay attention to what your body is telling you. Thank you so much for following along with this challenge. As I mentioned, it was a pretty important challenge for me, so thank you for your support on YouTube, but also people on Discord, where I was sharing more daily information on the challenge. Week 8 might have turned into week 10, but it's done. Now I'm going to let that heap fully heal before I think about running again. In the meanwhile, I have other challenges. In particular, I really want to focus back on the drawing challenge. I don't think I'm risking any injuries there. More on that later. Bye everyone.